Hello everyone, welcome to the seventh online lecture of the course Engineering Thermodynamics. What we have done in the previous lecture, first let me summarize that. So, in the previous lecture, we have studied the concept of reversible processes and we have also listed out the different factors which influence the reversibility of a process. And there we have come up with one additional concept of two types of reversibilities. One is known as internal reversibility and another is known as external reversibility. In case of internal reversibility, we have seen that if we do not have any source of irreversibility within the system boundary, then we refer to such type of process as internally reversible. However, if the conditions of reversibilities are being satisfied in the surroundings, that means out of the system boundaries, then we refer such process as externally reversible. Okay, and if for any given process both the internal as well as the external reversibility conditions are satisfied, then we will be calling the process as completely reversible. Otherwise, what will be happening? If in any process, let's say it is internally reversible but externally it is reversible, so overall we cannot call it as a reversible, completely reversible process, rather we have to call it as a irreversible process. Okay, now let me just give you an example of a irreversible process whatever we encounter in our daily life situation. For example, in your kitchen you might have used the faucet of the kitchen. So what we are having in faucet, from one side we are having some hot water, from another side we are having cold water, and then we control the flow rate of this hot as well as the cold water in order to obtain the output water at the desired temperature condition. Okay, so this is something of faucet which we have all seen in our kitchen. Okay, so what is basically happening, this hot water will be having some mass, say m1 flow rate if I take, then m1 dot, and let's say it is having enthalpy content of h1. Similarly, the cold one will be having mass flow rate of m2 dot and say enthalpy of h2. And when both of these are mixing, these are actually giving at output mass flow rate of m3 dot and say enthalpy of h3. So it means this process is nothing but it's a process of simple mixing of hot and cold water, and this mixing when it is happening, it is giving us one output stream of water which is having enthalpy content equal to H3 and mass flow rate equal to m dot 3. And we know that this mass flow rate m dot 3 will be nothing but equal to m1 dot plus m2 dot. This is something which is coming from the conservation of the mass. Now let's say if we have to reverse this process, it means if we have to reverse this process, what we have to do? Now we will be having nothing but m3 dot mass and with energy content h3. Now if I have to convert this mass into two different streams, so my now situation is that out of this mass, m1 dot amount I have split it in one side and m2 dot amount I have taken in another direction. So this was the our initial condition. So now what we have done till this point, we have done only the physical separation. That means whatever m3 dot mass was there, m1 component we have taken out that from that one, and now it is having remaining component is nothing but m2 dot. But now this is not simply our motive. So now if we see, though physically we have achieved the initial condition, it means when we have reversed the process physically, instead of mass m dot 3, we have come to situation where we are having water with properties of with masses of m1 dot and m2 dot. But if we try to see its properties at this point, its properties are nothing but, once again, this is also H3 and this energy content is also equal to H3. But what is our desired situation? Our desired situation is that instead of this H3, I want this to be H2 and this I want to be H1. Now if you try to see, when we are reversing the process, nothing but we have to make this identical to that of the cold water, whatever we have taken initially, and this stream we have to make identical to that of hot water, what we have taken initially. So it means after doing the physical separation, so now what we have done only the physical separation of the masses. So after doing the physical separation of masses, now if you try to see, this H3 was nothing but content corresponding to the after mixing situation. And what will be happening after mixing? Let's say after mixing, T3 is the temperature. Obviously T3 temperature will be nothing but less than equal to T1. However, T3 will be more in comparison to T2. So it means now when we are doing the reversal of the process, both the streams are having enthalpy content equal to H3. But one we have to bring it to H2 and another we have to bring it to H1. So it means what we have to do, this T3 temperature is nothing but less than T1 and it is greater than T2. So it means if I have to bring this H3 to H2 point, what I have to do, I have to remove some amount of heat from it. However, in case of first stream, if I have to convert enthalpy from H3 to H1, what I have to do over here, in this point, I have to add some heat. Okay, so what we are doing basically, in at one side we are adding some heat and in another side we are removing some heat. So basically, and this heat from where we will be taking, nothing but we are taking this heat from the energy content of H3. So it means when we are reversing the process, in one side we have to add the heat and in one side we have to remove the heat. Now if you try to see the conditions of temperature, in the stream number 1 side we have to add the heat. So if we try to see, the temperature of final point is less in comparison to that of temperature of the stream number 1 when we are doing the reversal of the process. It means to achieve this heat transfer, what we have to do, we have to supply some amount of work from the outside. Okay, so it means what is happening when we are doing this splitting upstream, in order to reverse the process, during that splitting of streams, in order to balance the energy content and bring the streams to their initial thermodynamic state, what we have to do, we have to supply certain amount of work from the surrounding. So it means when the first process was happening in forward direction, their surrounding and system was not undergoing through any type of heat and work transfer. However, when the reverse of this process is happening, in case of the reverse of the process, to make the system exactly identical to that of the initial conditions, what we have to do, we have to supply some amount of work from the surroundings. So it means when we are doing the reversal of the process, in that case what is happening, our surrounding is suffering some change. So that's why this type of process, when we are having mixing of the two stream, is nothing but example of a irreversible process. Okay, so this is something which is a very common example. Generally we see in our home appliances where mixing of hot and cold stream is taking place to give us some lukewarm water, whatever is which is at the desired temperature conditions. Now if from the lukewarm water we have to obtain the hot and cold water, it means we have to do the reverse of the process. In that case what will be happening, we have to supply certain amount of work from the surroundings to achieve that thing. So that's why in that case, during the reverse of the process, surrounding will be suffering through the loss of the energy content. So it means the process is giving some effect on the surrounding. So that's why we will be calling this process as a irreversible process. Okay. Now, let me just tell you one last point about the reversible and the irreversible processes. So, one final point is that when we plot any reversible process on any type of property diagram, say PV, TV, any property diagram, if you plot, if our process is reversible, we try to plot the reversible process with our normal form lines. So 1 point and 2 points. So let's say this process is happening in forward direction like this, and this is a reversible process. So the meaning of this reversibility is that if this process has taken this particular path, when it is changing its state from point number 1 to point number 2, it will be taking once again the exactly same path when it will be moving from point 2 to point 1. So for a reversible process, path of the system will be exactly, or path of the process will be exactly same when it is taking place in forward and the reverse direction. However, for a irreversible process, this may not be true. So due to that reason, when we plot any of the irreversible process in our property diagram, say some state of change is happening from point 1 point to 2, then during that time, normally the path of the process we show with help of a dashed line. Okay, so it means for a irreversible process we use a nothing but a dashed line to plot it on a property diagram. However, for a reversible process, we show it with the help of normal form lines. Okay. So with this, I'll conclude the discussion on the concept of reversible processes, and via email, I have got many requests for having some discussion on the numerical solving methodology of the open systems, first law of thermodynamics for open systems. So what I'll be doing now in this lecture, instead of going for the next theoretical concept, I'll try to show some of the numerical problems. Okay, so let us try to see the problem statement, and let us then try to follow the solution methodology for the given problem. So let me start with problem number 1. So what we are having in problem number 1, we are having a jet engine, and in the jet engine flow of air is taking place at 1000 Kelvin, 200 kilopascals, and 30 meter per second enters a nozzle. So as shown in figure. So what is happening over here? So one schematic figure is given. So this schematic representation is nothing but of a jet engine. So in the jet engine, we are having different components like diffuser at the starting, then compressor, combustor, where the fuel and air will be mixing and actually chemical reaction will be taking place. Then there is a turbine and then there is a nozzle. So this is schematic representation of the jet engine is also given over here. Now in this jet engine, if we see, there are multiple components, okay, but if we read to our problem statement, it is clearly written that flow of air is taking place at 1000 Kelvin, 200 kilopascals pressure and 30 meter per second, and it enters a nozzle. So it means whatever this condition is given, if I designate this with state 1, so this state 1 is nothing but at the inlet to the nozzle. So this is my point number 1 over here. And then it is given where the air exits at 850 Kelvin and 90 kilopascals. So when air will be entering at this point, obviously the exit of the air is nothing but at the end of the nozzle. So it means this condition is nothing but corresponding to point number 2. Now what we have to find, we have to determine the exit velocity assuming no heat loss. So it means when the air is moving from point 1 to point 2, during that time there is no loss of the heat, and what we have to do, we have to determine our exit velocity, means we have to find out V bar corresponding to state number 2. So that is what which is asked in the question. So don't get confused with the schematic of the figure, because in the schematic representation of the figure you will be finding that a large number of components are given. However, if you go through the problem statement, you will be finding that only the desired conditions are given across the nozzle of the entire jet engine. So it means it is nothing but a simple question of a flow through a nozzle. Okay, so let us first note down what are the initial given conditions. So what we are doing, we are now doing the solution of problem number 1. Now what we have to do, we have to first note down what are our given parameters. So what I have done, I have defined the inlet state as state number 1. So what is given? Temperature at inlet point is given as 1000 Kelvin. Pressure at inlet point is given at 200 kilopascals, and it is also given that when the air is entering at inlet, it is having velocity of 30 meters per second. Okay, and then the final state is given that when air is exiting out of the nozzle, it is having a temperature of 850 Kelvin and it is having a pressure of 90 kilopascals. And this is nothing but the flow is of the air is taking place through nozzle, and it has been given that there is no heat transfer when this flow is happening. So it means we are having nothing but a adiabatic situation. Okay, so and whatever the amount of air is entering at inlet, same amount of air is moving, going out of the nozzle at the exit. So it means this is nothing but the situation of a steady state process. So for a steady state process, we know that Q, rate of heat transfer, Q dot from 1 to 2, plus mass flow rate of the fluid at the inlet, so m1 dot into h1 plus v1 bar square by 2 plus g z1 is nothing but equal to w from 1 to 2 w dot plus m2 dot plus m2 dot into h2 plus v bar square by 2 plus g z2. So this is nothing but our steady state energy equation for a open system. Now it is given that condition is adiabatic, so that's why Q will be equal to 0. Now from the nozzle we will not get any work output, so that's why work is also equal to 0, and because it's a steady flow situation, so m1 dot is equal to m2 dot, so m1 and m2 will also be cancelling out, and what we will be getting finally, that moreover the orientation of the inlet and elevation of the inlet and outlet of the nozzle is also same, so that's why this minus this will also be cancelling, and at the end we will be simply getting h1 plus v1 bar square by 2 is equal to nothing but h2 plus v bar 2 square divided by 2. So now what we are having, v1 is given and h1 and h2 we can determine because state of the air is already specified, and v2 bar is something which we have to find out in the question. So it means from this equation I can simply write that v bar square 2 divided by 2 is nothing but equal to h1 minus h2 plus v bar 1 square divided by 2. Okay, now we know that air is nothing but a ideal gas. Okay, so if for air property tables are not given, what we can do, we can simply apply the ideal gas conditions. So we know that for ideal gases enthalpy dH is nothing but equal to Cp into dt. Now what I can write, H1 minus H2 I can simply write as nothing but Cp into T1 minus T2. Now if you try to see, T1 and T2 are already given in the question, and Cp is nothing but a specific heat of air at constant pressure. So that is a parameter which is something you should remember. So generally, though majority of the time you will be finding that properties of the working fluid are given in the question or either given in the form of tables, but air and water are the standard fluids, so you should remember the values of specific heats for air and water. Okay, so for air the value of Cp is nothing but equal to 1.002 kilojoule per kg Kelvin. So it means Cp of air is already known to us, and so it means we can calculate this term H1 minus H2. Similarly, V1 is given in the question, so this is also already known, and what we are having now, we have to simply determine the value of V2 from this equation. Now if you try to see, whenever I am using the value of Cp, that I am using in kilojoule per kg Kelvin, and my values of velocities are nothing but in meter per second. So meter per second, if I substitute the values, this will give us nothing but in terms of joules. So if energy in joules, I have to convert it into kilojoule. What I have to do, I have to divide these velocity terms by nothing but 1000. Okay, because we'll be substituting velocity over here is in nothing but meter per second SI units. So if we substitute velocity in SI units in our kinetic energy equation, it will be giving us energy in joules. However, in the change of enthalpy terms, we are finding energy in terms of kilojoule. So that's why we will be dividing these kinetic energy terms by 1000. So this will be equal to nothing but Cp into T1 minus T2 plus V bar 1 square divided by 2 into 1000. Okay, so this is our equation. Now Cp is known, T1 is known, T2 is known, V1 bar is known. I now ask you all to please substitute the value of all the parameters and tell me what final answer you are getting for the value of velocity V2 bar. So now if you substitute all the given parameters and try to find out the value of V2 bar, you will be finding final answer as nothing but V2 bar is equal to 549.09 meter per second. So this is the final answer for the velocity of air at the exit of the nozzle. Okay, so this first problem is clear to all. Okay, so let me now start with the second problem. So what we are having in second problem, we are having liquid water at 180 degrees Celsius and 2000 kilopascal pressure, and this water is throttled into a flash evaporator chamber having a pressure of 500 kilopascal. Now we have to neglect any change in the kinetic energy and we have to find out that what is the fraction of liquid and vapor in the chamber. So it means nothing but we are having some chamber and this chamber is maintained at 500 kilopascal. Now we are passing some water into this chamber and the properties of water are nothing but 2000 kilopascals pressure and 180 degrees Celsius temperature. So it means this is nothing but the inlet condition, that water is entering with this state 1 and then this is throttled. So it means when this water is entering into this tank, we are having some device over here and this device is nothing but a throttling device. Okay, so what it is doing, this throttling device will be reducing the pressure of water. So what is the final pressure of water in the chamber? That is nothing but equal to 500 kilopascal. So this is a nothing but our state number 2. So this question is nothing but a question of a throttling process and we have to neglect any change in kinetic energy. Okay, and at the end we have to determine that what is the fraction of liquid and vapor in the chamber. So it clearly means that when this throttling process is happening, because of that some portion of this liquid water is basically becoming vapor. So now our task is to determine that how much fraction of the liquid is converting into vapor. Okay. So let me start with the solution of this one. So let us first write once again all the given parameters. So what are the given parameters over here? First is that pressure of water is 2000 kilopascals. Okay. And second condition is given, temperature of water is nothing but equal to 180 degree Celsius. And then it is given that final pressure P2 is nothing but equal to 500 kilopascals. Okay. So now it is very important to first determine what is the initial state of the water. Though it is clearly mentioned in the question that water at initial stage is nothing but as a liquid. Now it can exist liquid either in saturated state or it may have subcooled or compressed state. So let us first identify the state of water at the initial condition. Okay. So how we can determine this thing? So to determine the initial state of water, what we have to do, what we will be doing, corresponding to 2000 kilopascals from the saturated pressure table, let us first determine that what is T saturation. Okay. So if we see the saturation pressure table, we are finding that this T saturation is nothing but equal to 212.38 degree Celsius. Okay, so corresponding to this given pressure, saturation temperature is 212.38 degree Celsius. However, your given temperature T1 is nothing but equal to 180 degree Celsius. So it is clear that T1 is less than T saturation. If T1 is less than T saturation, it means our state is nothing but a compressed liquid state. Okay. So state of the system or the condition at initial point is nothing but corresponding to the compressed liquid state. So now let me plot this on a PV diagram. So on a PV diagram, what will be happening? This is our pressure along ordinate, specific volume along abscissa, and this is our liquid vapor dome. Now in this liquid vapor dome, we will be having some constant pressure line corresponding to nothing but 2000 kilopascals. Okay, and in the subcooled region, this line will be something like this. Now, corresponding to this line, what we are having within this liquid vapor dome, the temperature condition is nothing but equal to, if I plot a constant temperature line, so that will be something like this. So here temperature is nothing but 212.38 degree Celsius. But our given temperature is nothing but equal to 180 degree Celsius. So there will be some another line of temperature corresponding to 180 degree Celsius, something like this. So say this line is nothing but corresponding to 180 degree Celsius. Now this line of 180 degree Celsius and pressure of 2000 kilopascal is crossing at this point. Okay, So this point is nothing but a point of, this point is nothing but a point number 1. Okay, so point number 1 is lying on somewhere on the compressed liquid state. Okay, now let us draw the another pressure line which is corresponding to 500 kilopascals. So this is our another pressure line which is corresponding to the exit condition, because throttling process is happening and the pressure within the this chamber, flash evaporator chamber, is nothing but equal to 500 kilopascal. So it means in the throttling process, what is happening basically, the pressure of the working fluid is changing from 2000 kilopascals and it is reducing to 500 kilopascals. Okay, so when the pressure will be reduced from 2000 kilopascal to 500 kilopascal, during that reduction of the pressure, what will be happening within the fluid, there will be increase in specific volume. Why? Because now we are moving from high pressure side to low pressure side. So in case of low pressure, what will be happening? Fluid will be actually expanding. Okay, so it means if I have to plot the point number 2, now the point number 2 is nothing but exit state, so it will be always lying on this 500 kilopascals pressure line. However, it will be such that its specific volume of the state number 2 should be more than the specific volume corresponding to state number 1. So let me write point number 2 is somewhere over here, because here our specific volume at 2 is becoming greater than specific volume at point 1. Okay, now throttling process, as I have described earlier, is nothing but a process where dissipation of energy takes place, because here dissipation of the energy is taking place, so it means throttling process is nothing but a irreversible process. So if it is a irreversible process, so it means if we have to plot this process on a property diagram, we have to show it with the help of dashed lines. So this is the process which is happening from point number 1 to point number 2. Now we already know that if we neglect the energy for, means kinetic energy change for a throttling process, then simply we can say that H1 is nothing but nearly equal to H2. Okay, so this is something which we have derived during our theoretical discussion, that for a throttling process H1 is nothing but equal to H2. Okay, so it means now the task comes that how to determine the value of enthalpy H1. Okay, so that is something which we have to now determine. So it means if you try to see over here, state number 1 is nothing but a compressed state, and for this compressed state, two properties P1 and T1 are known. Because the two properties are known, so it means we can determine the value of enthalpy directly from our compressed table. Okay, now if you go through the compressed steam tables, whatever I have given to you or I have uploaded on the Moodle, there you will be finding that the compressed tables are starting with a minimum pressure of 5 megapascals. Okay, however, in your question corresponding to point number 1, your pressure is nothing but equal to 2 megapascal. Okay, so it means whatever the pressure condition you are having, that pressure condition is not given in your compressed property table. Okay. Now, if you recall some of our earlier lectures, you will be finding that in one of the lecture I have shown that internal energy and specific volume of liquid, it means UF and VF. These are the two properties which are only function of temperature in the compressed state. Okay, so this is something which I have already shown in the previous lectures, that specific volume, because in the liquid state fluids are incompressible nature, so it means their density will not be influenced much upon changing the pressure. So that's why density will be sole function of temperature. Moreover, the internal energy content of the liquid state, when during the initial lectures we found that it is nothing but a sole function of temperature for the compressed state. So if this thing you remember, that if at any point of time you find that compressed property tables are not given, or the values are not available in the compressed property tables, for such a situation what you have to do, these two properties you have to take, UF and VF, and these two properties you have to determine nothing but from the saturation temperature tables given. So these are the saturation temperature tables at given conditions. Okay, so these two properties are something which you can simply determine at the given state of temperature. Okay, so our main equation is H1 is nearly equal to H2. However, we cannot directly determine the value of H1. Rather, we can write H1 as nothing but equal to U1 plus P1 into V1. Okay, and this we can write nearly equal to H2. Now P1 is already known. The question comes, we have to determine U1 and V1. So for determining U1 and V1, what we will be doing, because point number 1 is nothing but a compressed state. So for this state, property table is not available. So what we will be doing, because corresponding condition is nothing but 180 degrees Celsius. So corresponding to the 180 degrees Celsius from the saturation temperature table, we will be finding value of VF and UF. So U1 is nothing but equal to UF at 180 degree Celsius. Now if you try to find out the value of this property, this is nothing but equal to 761.92 kilojoule per kg. And similarly, if you determine V1 is equal to VF at 180 degree Celsius, you will be finding that it is nothing but equal to 0.001127 meter cube per kg. So it means now U1 and V1 are known. If U1 and V1 are known, P1 is something which is already given in the question. So what we will be finding, that our H2 is becoming nothing but nearly equal to 761.92 plus 2000 into 0.001127, and it is coming out to be 764.174 kilojoule per kg. Okay, so this is the value of enthalpy which we have got at the final state. Now if you remember, at final state already we know that this state is nothing but in between the saturation liquid vapor dome. So it means, and moreover the pressure is also known, 500 kilopascal. So if pressure is known, I can simply find out the vapor fraction over here by knowing the values of enthalpy at this point and this point, because already the enthalpy at point number 2 we have obtained with the help of property values at point number 1, and our process is nothing but a isoenthalpic process. So now this H2 we have obtained, and from our state of system we found that H2 is nothing but HF plus X into Hg minus HF when all these properties are calculated at nothing but 500 kilopascal. Okay, so now what I can do, I can go through the property table and corresponding to 500 kilopascal from the saturation pressure table I can determine the value of HF and Hg. So HF, if you find, it is coming out to be 640.09 kilojoule per kg, and Hg is nothing but 2748.1 kilojoule per kg. So now if you substitute all these values, you will be finding nothing but X is equal to 0.058863. Okay, so now what was the question? The question was that when this throttling process is taking place, we have to determine the fraction of liquid and vapor in our flash chamber. Okay, so this X is nothing but corresponding to state number 2, and we know the definition of X is nothing but mV divided by ml plus mv corresponding to point number 2. So it is becoming equal to 0.058863. This is nothing but fraction of vapor. Okay, similarly we can determine fraction of liquid, which will be ml by ml plus mv at point 2, and this will be equal to nothing but 1 minus x2, and if you find out this value, it is nothing but 0.941137. Okay, so this is our final answer for the problem number 2. Okay, now let us try to see problem number 3. So what we are having in problem number 3 is that a factory generates compressed air from 100 kilopascal 17 degrees Celsius by compression to 1000 kilopascal and 600 Kelvin, after which it cools in a constant pressure cooler to 300 Kelvin, and figure is also given. We have to find the specific compressor work and the specific heat transfer in the cooler. So basically this is state number 1, where air is supplied at 100 kilopascal and 17 degrees Celsius. Okay, and at the intermediate state it is having pressure of 1000 kilopascal and temperature of 600 Kelvin, and at the end from this point to this point we have done constant pressure cooler. So it means here pressure is remaining same 1000 kilopascal and temperature is becoming 300 Kelvin. So obviously here in the cooler this amount of heat is being taken out and here some work has been supplied. You have to determine the specific compressor work and specific heat. By meaning of specific is that it means W from 1 to 2, W dot from 1 to 2 divided by mass flow rate of the air, M dot. And specific heat means Q from 2 to 3 dot divided by mass flow rate of the air. Okay. So I will not go through the solution of this question. This is a very simple question which you can try by your own. So this is nothing but first you have to apply the steady state equation for compressor between point 1 and 2 and then you have to apply the steady state equation for cooler between point number 2 and 3. So let me just give you the final answers over here. However, I will not solve it. So the answer of first one is minus 310.62 kilojoule per kg and answer of heat transfer is nothing but equal to minus 300.6 kilojoule per kg. Okay, so these are the answers for this problem. I think this is very simple. You can apply the steady flow energy equation first for compressor and then for the cooler. Okay. Now we have seen different examples of steady state processes. Let us try to see one example for the transient process also. Okay. So this example is nothing but it is taken from your assignment number 5. So this is the question number 9 of assignment number 5. So what we are having over here, a 1 meter cube 40 kg rigid steel tank and it is containing air at 500 kilopascals and both tank and air are at 20 degrees Celsius. Now the tank is connected to a line where air is flowing at 2 megapascal and 20 degrees Celsius and the valve is opened. So what will be happening? Now inside tank pressure is 500, pressure in the pipe is 2 megapascal. So basically you are having a tank something like this and here you are having some valve and above you are having some line of air. Now in this line the conditions are pressure is 2 megapascal and temperature is 20 degrees Celsius and now over here it is very important. If you see this is a rigid steel tank and mass of the tank is 40 kg. So it means in this question you have to also consider the wall of the tank also because the conditions of wall of the tank are also given. So the tank is made up of steel, okay, and mass of this tank, it means mass of steel is nothing but equal to 40 kg, okay, and apart from the steel it is having some air also inside the tank and initial condition is that air is having pressure of 500 kilopascals and volume of 1 meter cube and temperature of 20 degree Celsius. Now as air is a ideal gas, so you can determine with the help of ideal gas equation that what is the mass of the air inside this tank initially. Okay. Now then valve is opened and it has allowed the air to flow into the tank until the pressure reaches 1.5 megapascal. So initial pressure of the tank P1 was 500 kilopascals and final pressure of the tank P2 is nothing but equal to 1.5 megapascals. Okay, and then valve is closed. Now assume air and tank are always at the same temperature. So what we are considering, that initially, though it is given in the question only, that air and tank are at 20 degrees Celsius. However, when the air has entered into the tank, then obviously the temperature of the air will be first increasing, and then slowly heat will be going through the walls of the tank in order to come in equilibrium with the air. But it is given in the question that at every point of time the tank and the air are in equilibrium. So it means whatever the temperature of the air will be having, same will be the temperature of material of the tank. Okay, and it is also given that final temperature. So it means T2 is nothing but equal to 35 degree Celsius. So T2 is nothing but the temperature once valve has been closed, corresponding to the final state of the tank. Now we have to determine that how much mass of the air, what is the mass of the air at the final state, and what is the total heat transfer associated with this phenomena. So it means this is nothing but the case of a transient process where initially system was having some different amount, and then at the final state the mass of the system has actually increased. Okay, so let us try to see the solution of question number 4. So what we are having in question number 4, the initial pressure of the tank is 500 kilopascals and initial temperature of the tank is 20 degree Celsius, and volume of the tank is nothing but equal to 1 meter cube. Okay, moreover, the mass of the body of the tank is also given. So mass of the steel is given as 40 kg. Okay, and it is also given that body of the steel at point 1 is also having the same temperature of 20 degree Celsius. Okay, now from the ideal gas equation, by writing P1 V1 is equal to M1 R T1, I can find out the mass of the gas or mass of the air at the initial point. This is known, this is known, temperature is also known. Now you have to remember one thing, that this temperature we have to substitute in nothing but Kelvin over here. Okay, so if you substitute all these values, you will be finding that initial mass of air, means mass of air at state number 1 is coming out to be nothing but 5.94 kg. Okay, so this is the initial mass of the air. Now if we see the final states, corresponding to final state, pressure is nothing but 1.5 megapascal, okay, which is nothing but equal to 1500 kilopascals, and then temperature at final state is nothing but equal to 35 degrees Celsius. Okay, and volume of the tank, because boundary of the tank is fixed, so volume is fixed, that is nothing but equal to 1 meter cube. So it means we can determine the mass at the final state also. So if you calculate the mass at final state, it is coming out to be nothing but 16.96 kg. Okay, now if we apply the mass conservation, what we can say, that M2 minus M1 is nothing but equal to the mass which has entered into the system. So where Mi is nothing but mass of air that has entered into the tank. Okay, so this is the mass of air which is entering into the tank. So it means mass of air entering into the tank is nothing but equal to m2 minus m1, and it is coming out to be 11.02 kg. Okay, so first question we have answered that 11.02 kg of mass of air is entering into the system. Now the second question we have to see. So the second question tells that we have to determine what amount of heat has entered into the system. So it means, let's say initially the energy content of the system was E1, and finally the energy content of the system is nothing but equal to E2. Now one thing you have to remember over here, that here system comprises of air plus body of the tank. Okay, because steel is also having equivalent rise in temperature as that of air. So it means our system comprises of both the body of the tank as well as the working fluid. Okay, so now we know from energy equation I can write that energy transfer from 1 to 2 minus work transfer from 1 to 2 plus any addition of energy. So it means Mi into Hi minus any loss of energy, Me into He. That entire thing will be equal to nothing but E2 minus E1, where E2 is energy of the system at state 2 and E1 is energy of the system at state 1. Now we know that there is no work interaction associated with the system because only air is entering into the system. So work is equal to 0, and there is no mass which is leaving out of the system. So Me is also equal to 0. So I can simply say that 1 to 2Q plus Mi Hi is nothing but equal to E2 minus E1. Now let us specify the components of E2 and E1. So what will be happening? Corresponding to state 2, mass was M2, and if I have to split the specific energy content, I have to do nothing but U2 plus V2 bar square by 2 plus GZ2 minus M1 into U2 plus, M1 into U1 plus V1 bar square by 2 plus GZ1. Now if we consider that, as it is given in the question, elevation of the tank is not changing. So these two terms will be cancelling, and moreover, if we neglect the change of kinetic energies, and because in the given question we are talking about a tank, within the tank always the air or working fluid will be in the stationary mode. Obviously there will be molecular motions, but there will not be any bulk motion of the fluid. So this is also 0 and this is also 0. So simply I can say that Q from 1 to 2 plus Mi into Hi is nothing but M2 into U2 minus M1 into U1. Okay, so this is something which is true if we are considering only air as the system. However, in actual practice what we are having steel also part of the system. So it means what we have to do, we have to also write down over here the change in energy content of the steel also. So along with this M2 minus M1, there will be some additional term which is nothing but mass of the steel into change in enthalpy of steel from HS2 minus HS1. So how the enthalpy content of the body of the tank has changed, that also we have to include over here. So it means plus we will be having one more term, ms into HS2 minus HS1. Okay, why this is coming? Because now along with the air we are considering the body of the tank also as part of our system. Okay, so now let us substitute different values. So what we are having, 122 Q1 will be plus Mi into Hi is nothing but equal to M2 into U2. Now M2 I can write as M1 plus Mi into U2 minus M1 into U1 plus mass of steel into so for steel also I have done one mistake over here, because for the case of steel what will be happening, we are not having any flow associated. So that's why instead of enthalpy for steel we have to write only the internal energy of the steel. So US2 minus US1 of the steel. Similarly US2 minus US1 of the steel. So for steel we are writing nothing but internal energy. Moreover, because steel is nothing but a solid, and for the solids and liquids we have already seen that enthalpy is nothing but equal to that of the internal energy, because Cp and Cv both are same for solids. Okay, but still because we have to go with the correct terms, because the body of the steel is always stationary, we are writing over here the energy content, so we will be writing in terms of internal energy only. Okay, so for steel I'll be writing nothing but US2 minus US1. Okay, now if I take out the different terms and if I bring this MIHI term also to the right hand side, what we will be having, Q122 will be nothing but equal to M1 is coming common, U2 minus U1, and then what we are having plus Mi into U2, and this Mi is going to right hand side, so minus Mi, and Hi I can write as Ui plus P into Vi, Pi into Vi. Okay, and then plus mass of steel into US2 minus US1. Now by simply writing the ideal gas theorem in terms of Cp and Cv, I can say that M1 I can write U2 minus U1 as nothing but Cv into T2 minus T1, plus similarly I can take Mi common over here and I can write U2 minus Ui as nothing but equal to Cv into T2 minus Ti, and then we are having one additional term as Pi into Vi, and we know nothing but PV is equal to RT for an ideal gas, so I can simply write this PV with R into Ti over here. And then similarly we have to write for the steel, so mass of the steel and Cp or Cv of the steel, so that is same whether you write Cv or you write Cp, into temperature of steel at point 2 minus temperature of steel at point 1. So now if you see, all the masses are known, all the temperatures are known. The only things are unknown, which are nothing but property value Cv and Cs. Now Cv is something which once again you people have to remember, because Cv is nothing but the specific heat of air at constant volume. It is nothing but a standard property, so you should remember it as equal to 0.717 kilojoule per kg Kelvin, and specific heat of steel is nothing but equal to 0.46 kilojoule per kg Kelvin. Now this property is something which should be given in the question. So perhaps I think this was missing from the data. So when the question will be coming in the exam, this property will be given in that question. Okay, so it means now if we substitute all the values, so what we are having, Q from 1 to 2 is nothing but equal to M1 is 5.94 into CV is 0.717 into T2 minus T1. So T2 is 35 and T1 is 20 plus MI. MI is nothing but 11.02 into 0.717 into T2 minus Ti. So T2 is 35, Ti is 20 plus, because we were having PV is equal to RT. So one more mistake I have done over here. So because we have shifted this property into the right hand side. Okay, so in the main bracket it is correct. So what we will be having, plus we will be having nothing but R, which is equal to 0.287 into temperature. Now when we will be doing PV is equal to RT, during that time we have to write this temperature is in nothing but Kelvin. So here I have to write temperature in Kelvin as 293. Okay, and then we have to write mass of steel is 40, Cp of steel is 0.46 into change in temperature of steel 35 minus 20. So if you try to find out, you will be finding that this heat transfer is becoming nothing but equal to minus 468.9 kilojoule. So this is your final answer of question number 4. The only thing, question number 4 was slightly typical. The only twist was that along with the mass of the air, the body of the tank was also the part of the system, and that was also participating in the heat transfer and storing some amount of energy. Okay, so I hope with all this information you all will be able to solve the numerical problems related to first law of thermodynamics for open systems. Okay, so now I'll stop at this point, and from our next lecture onwards we'll try to see the concept of Carnot cycles. Okay, so see you all in the next lecture.